So today, a little bored, but what we're gonna do is we're going to make tips for making a loadout in Uncharted 4 multiplayer. So we'll just start off. I wrote out a list. We'll start off at the top. So you want to have a bunch of loadouts. So all through the year. Now, when we go to the boosters, I know a lot of people, they'll have either stealth or mark on damage. Now what you'll want to do is only use stealth 2 in your loadout, like that. And basically what that does is it makes it you can't be marked by sidekicks or enemy players. The reason you don't use stealth 3 in your loadout, like that, the only difference between that and that is you can't be marked by the staff of A or Manco. I'm going to tell you in a second too. The reason you do not want to use stealth 3 instead of stealth 2, you always want to use stealth 2 instead in your first loadout that you're using during the game, because if they're not using the staff, there's 2 extra loadout points you could technically use. But what you see in a second, as soon as they use their first staff, people who use 1 staff are tended to use 1 or more staffs because it's in their loadout, so why wouldn't they? So what I'm getting at is you'll have 2 separate loadouts, one with stealth 2, and that'll be your primary loadout, so you save 2 points. And then another loadout such as this, and you see this loadout here, you have stealth 3. So say if they all of a sudden started using the staffs, you'd be like, okay, I'm just going to switch to stealth 3 now. When you die, or maybe they start using stealth 3 and you don't want to waste a death, just jump off a hill, because it won't count the death if you jump off the hill. Switch to this loadout, stealth 3, and then they can no longer see you with their staffs. So that's just a small tip for players who I always see use stealth 3, but during the game the enemy's not using the staff, so it makes no logical sense. Alright, so the next one we're going to do is mark on damage. A mark on damage, it's good. A lot of people use it, and the best thing about it probably is it makes you a ton of cash and gives you a ton of assists. But the thing about it is you'll always, here I'll bring it up so you can see what it looks like on screen, this one. You always want to have a different loadout other than mark on damage. And the reason for that is if you're hitting your targets and you're noticing they're not getting highlighted, that's because either they have stealth 2 on or stealth 3. Now, if you haven't noticed, that's 5 loadout points right there. Or if you're using 2, that's 3 loadout points. And that's a lot of loadout points. So you're always going to want to have another loadout without mark on damage, and you just have regular stuff on. So say if they're using stealth, maybe switch to another loadout that has hardened and you get an ARX. It just saves you extra loadout points if they have stealth on and you have mark on damage. So our next tip, this is probably for more beginner players, but cover all ranges. So what I'm talking about is usually you'll want to have a long range gun and a medium to close range gun. And what I mean by that is, so for example, the Aegis is a perfect close range gun, but if you come into someone who's long range and they're using a crevasse, you're pretty much fucked until you get close range, or get up close to them. And And what you'll want to do, so we got our close range gun. I know this is very fucking basic, but so but I see a lot of people do this, and it's pretty simple idea, but you'll want to pair it with a longer range rifle, say like the Mazur. That's long range. If you're good with that, that'll be a perfect pairing. The Metler, that's another long range. But this is just like options. The M14. Yeah, so you understand the picture. It's pretty basic. Another one, say this is the primary what everyone uses. They always use the HS and the Crevasse. That's like everyone's go-to. But another one that a lot of people, I think, like, say you want to use the Spazzotti and the Crevasse. A lot of people do that. But you can also, like, that's for like beginners. Just as long as you have a far range and a close range, you're good. But somebody who maybe is a little bit more like inept and doesn't care about that and wants to get in close, you can have a primary close range. But like say an Aegis and a Spazzotti, I think whatever. But yeah, that's the other one. Just cover all your ranges. Here's another one that is very basic, but I wonder if everybody always understands, is have a separate loadout for heavy weapons. So say this is your big old loadout here, and you want to have like 2 hero weapons because for some reason you love wasting loadout points. But this way you can have a massive loadout. So there's 26 loadout points right there because you have 2 hero weapons. But what I'm trying to say is you can have this loadout, but have a separate loadout for your heavy weapons. Say you're starting the game out, but always like you're starting the game out, have this loadout, but when you want to switch to your heavy weapons, change out the loadouts and go to a separate heavy weapon class. So here, like, you die and then you change up to your heavy weapon class and you have a separate loadout for that, so you don't waste 4 loadout points on your heavy weapon. This is just very basic stuff, but for beginners you never know if they just overlook it or yeah. So and it saves you like 4 loadout points, so you could have something else like a nade. If you don't have that ARX in your loadout, you could actually have another nade, or just have a nade in your loadout instead. That's another simple thing. One more thing I would say is never rely on sidekicks. This is probably for a little bit more advanced, I would say. And why I'm saying this, never rely on sidekicks, is because when you start to run into players who are more skilled, for instance, they can start to take out your sidekicks like crazy, right? Now you'll see it says $500 in game. Yeah, that's a lot of cash. So if you're gonna be wasting that on sidekicks or brutes are like the most pricey. You're gonna be wasting that on brutes. It's gonna cost you a lot. So if you're seeing that your sidekicks are being plucked out the map as soon as you put them in, don't just have like loadouts with sidekicks in them, because that's another, like, that's 7 loadout points right there, and that's 7 loadout points you could use for something else, especially if you're facing skilled players. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I know it's very simple, like you'd think, but for instance, yeah, like, then switch to something where you don't have sidekicks, and that way you don't waste all those loadout points on a sidekick that's just going to be plucked out of the map instantly. But I see a lot of people, like, that's all they use is sidekicks, and you wonder if they have anything else in their loadouts. Yeah, that's that one. And this is the last one. Hopefully I haven't dragged on too long, but and it's this is very basic stuff. Um, and it's gonna sound very stupid for someone who's been playing the game for a long time, but experiment with your guns. Always have many loadouts with different guns. And why I'm saying this is depending how players move, how they strafe, and your gun's recoil pattern, they may be good at avoiding like certain guns, but not other guns. But what I mean by that is, say you're using the HS, and they're amazing at avoiding the HS. That's shit out of luck for you. So you'll actually, and then say if you have another loadout with, for instance, the low, which is a really good example because the low's recoil pattern is side to side mostly. If they're strafing side to side in a certain recoil range that the low is in, all of a sudden the low is working a lot better than the HS, simply because the recoil pattern. A lot of people, it just goes over their head, I guess. But yeah, that's all I got, and these are all very basic and um, very simple tips that everybody already knows because the game's been out for 4 years. But yeah, that's my answer.